For this mini-doc, I'll be talking about the life and voyages of Jacques Cartier. Jacques Cartier was born in Saint-Malo, France, on December 31st, 1491, and at a young age explored Brazil before making 3 major North American voyages. He was called upon by King Francois I of France in 1534 to lead a series of expeditions to the New World in hopes of finding a passage to Asia or locate riches in the New World. In 1534, on his first voyage, he took 2 ships with 61 men and crossed the Atlantic in 20 days, arriving on May 10th. He spent 5 weeks exploring and mapping this area and came into contact with several tribes along the way. His first contact was with the Micmac in Newfoundland, and it was peaceful as they had traded furs, hats, and tools. His second contact was rather frightening when his ship was surrounded by over 40 canoes. Although the Micmac meant no harm to him, he fired 2 cannons over their heads as warning shots, sending them to shore. His third contact was with the Iroquois, when he traveled inland down the St. Lawrence. He met with Chief Donnacona and earned his trust. At the end of the voyage, he convinced the chief to let him bring his 2 sons back to France to teach them, and he would return in a year with more goods, his sons, and a guide into the New World. Before he left, Cartier planted a large cross that read, "Long live the French." The Iroquois couldn't read, but they understood the sentiment of the cross, meaning that the French wanted this land. In his second voyage, a year later in 1535, true to his word, Cartier returned with Donnacona's 2 sons. This time he brought 3 ships and 110 men. The 2 sons had learnt French and had also transferred some Iroquois to some French, and were able to act as guides leading Cartier down the St. Lawrence River. They told Cartier about 2 major settlements, Stadacona, which he had mistakenly called Canada, and Hochelaga. The 2 sons refused to take Cartier to Hochelaga, however, because it was the tribe of their enemies. So he went alone. He was greeted by the Hochelagans, and while he was there, he climbed the large mountain at Hochelaga and named it Mont Royal. From there, he looked west and realized that Asia was nowhere to be seen, and he was exploring a whole new world. And this Mont Royal he named is now Montreal, so that's the origins of where he got Montreal. Cartier then discovered that the Hochelagans had over 14 villages, with Hochelaga holding over 1,500 people. They stored fish, meats, corn, beans, cucumbers, and fruits. He returned later to Stadacona and Chief Donnacona for the winter and set up a very small settlement. However, his men fared badly without the proper provisions. In a poorly built fort, 25 men died of scurvy before Donnacona's son showed them how to survive in this new world. Unfortunately, the Stadaconans lost 50 people to diseases that had been transferred by Cartier and his men. When spring arrived, however, Cartier erected another cross and kidnapped Donnacona, his sons, 3 other tribal leaders, and their children, taking them back to France. They would never see Canada again, as they died in France. On Cartier's third voyage, almost 10 years later, in 1541, Cartier arrived with 5 ships and 1,500 men. He also brought the means to set up a farm with seeds and wild animals such as cows and pigs. Upon arrival, he built a large fort 15 kilometers north of Stadacona. Inside the walls, he planted crops and raised animals. And despite these provisions, the winter was yet again a disaster for Cartier. In retaliation for not returning with their leader, he also had some run-ins with the Iroquois, and Cartier's men eventually killed 35 Iroquois who ventured close to the fort. However, in return, the Iroquois cut them off from gathering fresh food in the surrounding area. In the spring, Cartier gave up trying to settle Canada and returned to France. The French did not return to Canada for 65 years, until Samuel Champlain arrived, determined to establish a colony for France. However, he would have failed without the provisions laid by Cartier in the early days, and Canada would not be where it is today without Jacques Cartier's exploration in the New World.